How do you become more self-aware to know when you're doing one of these types of procrastination?
It's funny, George, because I was actually a little afraid of exactly what you said of like, oh man, are people going to feel like I'm calling them out? Most leaders, though, when they read about this, they don't feel called out. They feel heard. They go, oh my gosh, like this is my life. I'm working so hard. I'm completely overwhelmed. I am giving everything I have, and yet the harder I work, it almost sometimes feels like the further I fall behind. And I think it's not about calling you out and saying, hey, you have to work harder. People often misinterpret the message of take the stairs. Take the stairs, this metaphor, of the book and everything, is not about making your life as hard as possible. It's actually the opposite. It's about making your life as easy as possible. However, it's predicated upon this unpopular premise that the shortest, most guaranteed path to greatness is to do the hardest parts of things as soon as possible. And in a word, we call that discipline. Discipline is the antidote to procrastination. Discipline is the thing that will break you free. Discipline is also the thing that will break your team free. It's creating a culture of discipline. For a leader, it is the discipline. And by the way, this is the Procrastinate on Purpose. Where that title comes from is the idea is you procrastinate on purpose with the insignificant things or the things that only matter here and now. And by procrastinating on the trivial, that is where you create margin in your life that you then reinvest into the significant things. And we describe significance as the things that matter long term. But that takes discipline. You have to resist a fire. You have to resist the urge to answer, your email where the newest email is at the top. I mean, that's how most of us organize our inbox. The newest email's at the top. But very often, the most recent email is not the most significant item for us to deal with. But that's how we organize our inbox. It's how we organize our mind. It's how we organize our attention in our life. And so we're trapped in this prison of our own construction because we don't have the discipline to break free. So you have to do that. Meanwhile, your team, which typically, your team is probably more likely struggling with procrastination or creative avoidance, one of the first two. They have to develop discipline, and you have to create a culture of discipline as a leader that says, even though we live in an escalator world, even though we live in a world where everybody is chasing the shortcut, even though we see indulgence and temptation all around us and everything is promised instant, you have to develop a take the stairs culture, a take the stairs mindset, which says, even though the world around me is taking the escalator, I'm going to consciously choose to take the stairs. I'm going to consciously choose to do the thing I know I should be doing, even though I don't feel like doing it, not because I'm embracing this "let's make life as hard as possible" kind of thing. It's not even like a Navy SEAL kind of mentality or do it. It's just going, I'm doing it strategically because I realize that the payoff of discipline is freedom. The payoff of discipline is peace. The payoff of discipline is performance, results, abundance. But the only way to get there is through making short-term sacrifices.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts there. It reminds me a lot about the money principles that we teach and how Dave says you work too hard to be this broke. And the same thing applies to leaders. You work too hard to not have it be anywhere closer towards your vision and just get a bunch of stuff done that didn't matter.
Yeah.
And so we've got to kind of get the debt out of our lives when it comes to the productivity. That's probably another book in there somewhere.
Well, yeah. And if for those of you that don't know, right, I am first and foremost a fan of Dave Ramsey and financial peace. I mean, that changed our life. We had $55,000 in personal debt when I heard of Dave, read the book. Then we had a friend that worked here, and I spoke at Devo back in 2008, and then we just kind of become friends over the years. But the same thing that where Dave says that you worked too hard to be broke, you also work too hard to be constantly stressed and overwhelmed. But why? It's because we're engaging in the same bad habits. In the same way that Dave says, look, the way to get control of your life, right, is the first thing you do is you make a budget, and then you get an emergency fund. You have to do the same thing with your time. You have to stop and go, let me identify what are the things that really matter. So just like the parallels between financial riches and margin and like the riches of freedom and time freedom are so parallel. It's crazy. But like you have to tell your money where it will go, otherwise it'll disappear. You have to tell your time where it's going to go, otherwise it will disappear. In fact, this is called the law of Douglas Macarthur, that the amount of busy work always expands to fill the amount of attention we allow to be available. So if you want to control that busy work, you have to narrow your attention, you have to narrow your focus, and you have to, really sink in to the things that matter. But the debt snowball, the gazelle intensity, is the same concept. We call it the magnification principle of focus, and we use the metaphor of a magnifying glass, right? So if you take a magnifying glass and if there's you take a piece of paper and it's just outside and it's on the street and there's the sun, nothing happens to the paper. But maybe you did this when you were a kid. You hold up a magnifying glass, catch the piece of paper on fire. Why? Because focus is literally power. It's scientifically power. Sunlight focused enough creates enough heat to catch a piece of paper on fire. Water can actually be streamlined tight enough that it can cut through steel. Focus is power, which is why if you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. What is a budget? It is focusing your money. What is a schedule? Focusing your time.